Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the TFTPod podcast with your very flat host, Ari Stamatakos. Now, I'll just get the elephant out of the room and kind of explain the slightly less enthusiastic tones in which I would normally present this podcast with. But basically, for those who are in Australia, you should know anyway. Just if you're from Australia and the word Carlton versus Collingwood in round 23, you'll understand. For those listening overseas, basically to put it in football terms, what I've experienced over the weekend is like, say Birmingham, actually no, say Celtic and Rangers were in the championship. Say Celtic were, and say I'm a Celtic fan, just for example, say Celtic were in the playoff places in the championship for the whole season, from literally week 1 till the final game. They versus Rangers on the final game. They go 2-0 down at halftime. They come back and hit the front and hit the lead, being 3-2 up, and in the last 10 minutes cop 3 goals and lose 4-3. That's kind of like, actually no, it's not even like that. It was say Celtic went 4-2 up and then copped 4 goals in the last 10 minutes and lost 5-4 to drop out of the playoff places, despite being in the playoff places for the whole season. That's kind of what I've just experienced. So I am quite shattered, quite flat, quite distraught, quite traumatized, but and also didn't help that. Let's just say that Celtic example was what I was actually feeling. Celtic, the week before that game, lost in the 98th minute to some team after drawing the whole game and then losing in the 98th minute. The week before, and then obviously this week, that's just happened. So, very flat, very distraught, very traumatized in a way. But the show must go on. And there is some football to talk about. Also didn't help that my Chelsea decided to just shit the bed as well. So I've had 2 weeks in a row where both my teams decide to torture me in the most cruel way possible, which, I'm not saying I signed up for this, but I would like to think this wouldn't happen anymore, but quite clearly it has. Now, let's just get into it. We've got some things to talk about. There wasn't a major storyline coming out of the weekend. There wasn't like a Man United falling Chelsea being shit, but that's not really a surprise to people who really understand Chelsea's situation. We have Casemiro to Manchester United, which looks all but confirmed. Actually, no, is confirmed by Manchester United, so we'll touch on that. We'll touch on West Ham. Is it a form slump? Is it something else? What's going on there? I want to speak on Nottingham Forrest as well briefly, because what they're doing is ludicrous. Speak on my Chelsea. Speak on PSG as well, because I feel like let's add a bit of continental flavour to this episode. And I want to have a speak on a certain West Ham player doing something which I don't understand why you would do, considering what your team is going through. But I think for those on Twitter will know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's just get into it, and let's start from the top. Let's start with, as I said, Casemiro. Who knows how to actually pronounce it, but he's off to Manchester United. This will be Erik ten Hag's third signing as senior boss, and this kind of really came out of nowhere. It was almost like, was it really? It was almost like a link that we all thought, yeah, he'll be linked to them, and nothing will come from it. But he has made the move over for £60 million, I think it is, and he's on like 400k a week, which is utterly ridiculous. But I think now we've come to terms in modern football anyway, that money is just an object, or not even. It's not real. Money's not real. Teams just spend. As I fix my lighting, teams just spend for whatever reason, because they can afford to spend literally everything they've got, because that's how the world works. But he's gone to Manchester United, and this was an interesting signing because this isn't a signing that I thought was going to be in the realm for them. I always thought if they were going to sign a defensive midfielder, it would be a Frankie De Jong-esque type signing. I didn't think they would go for a player like Casemiro, who is more of a destroyer, is very much a traditional destroyer in a sense, and what this kind of not screams at because like screams out for me because I feel like that is quite harsh. What this shows to me is, in my opinion, this shows a disconnect from the board to the manager. But I'll touch on that a little bit later because I don't think this is an Erik Ten Hag signing. I just don't think that Ten Hag. I just don't feel like Ten Hag and Casemiro work together. But I could be wrong. I just feel like that was my first thoughts. But if you look at what Casemiro offers as a player, he's, like I said, a very traditional destroyer and doesn't really offer a whole lot in terms of ball progression or ball progression or like passing, breaking lines, press proofness or press proof ability, if you would call it that. It will be interesting to see where he fits in. Of course, United do play with that 4-2-3-1 system that kind of moves to a 4-3-3 because the players just can't play the 4-2-3-1 system. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, he'll slot in alongside that double pivot. They still do need another defensive midfielder. If you want to play Christian Eriksen there. I mean, I said last week you shouldn't play Christian Eriksen as a defense in a double pivot, but when you have Casemiro next to him, you could almost get away with it. Just because of how defensively solid he is. He's probably one of the better, the best purely defensive-minded defensive midfielders in the world. Yes, I know he's 30, and yes, I know it's exorbitant fees and whatever, but I'm not really sure that matters. I am just treading with caution about this signing. This could very well end up like a Bastian Schweinsteiger, which I've seen thrown around on Twitter. The comparisons. This could very well end up being like another one of those signings which just doesn't end up working out. I don't think it will. I do think he'll improve them. I think it's almost impossible for him not to improve them just because of how much of a rabble they are at the moment. But I do like the way that Casemiro plays, and I do think that he could play a big role in United. And I saw this tweet which was very poignant by Casey Evans, who said Casemiro is one of those signings I'll describe as securing the team's floor rather than raising the team's ceiling. Now, I think that's a very, very accurate tweet, and I don't think I could have described it any better because you look at the Casemiro signing and you think, okay, like this isn't going to take them from being a rabble to being very good. But it will just give them that extra layer of security, that extra layer of stability in defensive midfield, allows them to build the team off. That's what I said pre-season. I said pre-season that United needed to get a defensive midfielder in as their number one priority, not because of you can't play McTominay or Fred there, just because of the lack of stability in that position pretty much since Michael Carrick or Ander Herrera, even like if you want to push it to recent times, ever since those players have been let go, it's just been like the instability in that position has been drastic, and it's caused massive upheaval for the team because no one knows what they're building off. I think the defensive midfield / double pivot is the most important positions in football because not only do they allow a base for the attack, they allow protection for the defense, and they just give an aura of confidence around the team, and it gives them so much more license to attack. Like you see, like Fabinho transformed the way Liverpool were able to play because he just gave the freedom for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson to get up, for the front three to be expressive. Similarly with Rodri at Manchester City. I flagged pre-season that they needed to get this position sorted, not because of you can't blame McTominay or Fred there, because of the reasons I've just mentioned. So for them to have waited 3 games for that, well, 2 games, but I don't think he'll feature against Liverpool. For them to wait this long to get it done, I don't like that, but it's happened. You'd rather make the signing late than not make the signing at all. So I think on a base level, it's good. Like I said, he's going to improve them because it's almost impossible for him not to improve them. I just don't think he's the player to build the team off, and I don't think he's a player that you could build your future around. I don't see a type of player that can have a massive offensive influence for this team. I know he provides that protection, but when you look at Ten Hag's system, you kind of want. I mean, even I flagged last week the double pivot that he played at Ajax with Edson Alvarez and Ryan Gravenberch. Edson Alvarez did provide a little bit of attacking impotence, a little bit of an attacking verve, kind of just playing simple passes, but passes that could like stretch the opposition. And he had the ability to spray a 30-yard, 40-yard pass in him. I don't think Casemiro has that, but I'll trust Ten Hag in this because I don't think it's his signing, but I trust that he'll be able to get the best out of Casemiro. And if you want to look at it at a very objective level, finally they've got a defensive like a world-class defensive midfielder. I don't think it fits Ten Hag's system, but like he's a good enough manager to make it work. So thank God for United's sake that they finally got a defensive midfielder of world-class caliber in. I'm not. I mean, I'm not overly happy with the signing when speaking about it, like from a neutral's perspective and looking at United, like what they need. I'm not overly happy. I do think someone with a little bit more ball playing ability and maybe a little bit younger would have been better. But it's better than having McTominay. It's better than having Fred. It's better than having Christian Eriksen or whoever in that defensive midfielder spot. So yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good signing. Not great, pretty good. I'd say right now it's a 7 out of 10 signing. But it could well and truly be a 9 out of 10 signing this time next year. Or it could be a 4 out of 10 signing this time next year. I feel like this has got a lot of room. My judgment isn't fully made, put it that way. I am, as I yawn again. I'm so tired, I don't know why. Probably because I didn't really sleep that well last night. But I don't think this signing is... Sorry, what was I going to say? I think this signing has a lot of room to either grow or to shrink in a sense. Like this has a lot more room to be either very good or very bad. We just have to see on how United performs and how Ten Hag can get the best out of him. I do think this people are saying that this means I'll go to a 4-3-3 with a single pivot. I could see that. I think Casemiro is very capable of playing a single pivot, so I'm not sure that's a worry. Does Ten Hag want to play a single pivot? Not really, I don't think. Unless he goes with like a Eriksen and Fernandes just ahead of him. Like Casemiro, Fernandes, Eriksen, maybe that's too attacking, maybe that's not balanced enough. Unless he plays Eriksen as that number 8 in a double pivot, which I can kind of see them getting away with it in a sense, although I'm not a total fan of it. I can see them getting away with it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. I'm not sure when he's available. I'm not even sure. I'm not quite sure that the deal has actually gone through. I think just in principle. It's gone through. Let me just check United socials. A day ago, nothing. Yeah, so so United reach agreement for Casemiro transfer, UK visa and medical terms personal and medical terms. So the deal in principle between the two clubs is done, just all the administration stuff and all the background stuff. So I don't think he'll be available for Liverpool. Oh no, he almost certainly won't be available for Liverpool. I doubt he'll be available for next week. So it'll be interesting to see whether United can get through both of those games unscathed. As we'll do a preview of the Liverpool game, just a brief preview of the Liverpool United game a little bit later on. But yeah, overall, I like this signing. I think it's pretty good. I think it's about a 7 out of 10 signing, like I said, but it's got a lot of room to grow. I feel like this time in 12 months, we could either see it as being a 10 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 signing. So yeah, he offers a lot defensively, one of the best true defensive midfielders in the world. Gives the license to Delo and Malacia or Luke Shaw to bomb on and like be more of an offensive presence. Gives Ten Hag a little bit of tactical fluidity as well, and gives the base that allows protection for the back four and the license for the attackers to be attackers and really express themselves. So yeah, 7 out of 10 signing for now. We'll just see how it develops. I'm treading with caution with Manchester United. I don't want to go put all my eggs in one basket with them. because I can't trust them. That's pretty much the crux of things. Now, let's move on. And let's go from Casemiro to United, to a team that has similarly underperformed and similarly needs a lot of work, and that is West Ham United. Now, with West Ham, there's just something not quite clicking with them that I just don't understand. They've taken, what is it? They've taken 8 points from a possible 36 and 5 clean sheets in their last 22 Premier League games. Now, what does this mean? I don't quite know, because obviously we all have kind of been conditioned to think West Ham, they're a sturdy team. They're always you always expect them to be mid-table-esque, challenging for Europe. David Moyes, well-drilled side, Jared Bowen, Antonio, Fornells, Lanzini, Cresswell, all these type of guys, Souček, Rice, these guys, right? But there's just something not clicking there. They've obviously brought in Scamacca, who hasn't really, it's still early days, so we can't really judge him, and Timo Kerr, from PSG. I don't know how to pronounce his name to an exact pronunciation, but of course he did give away the penalty for Brighton to score their first goal on the weekend. Timo Kerr. I don't know. You all know who I'm talking about. It's actually not Timo. It's Thilo. My mistake. As I just checked that. But yeah, he gave away the penalty for McAllister to score, and then obviously the second goal came not long after. It's weird for West Ham. It's quite bizarre, because I think I came into this season thinking they signed Scamacca. I thought that Scamacca signing pushed them over Newcastle. I thought they were going to be the best of the rest in terms of, if you take away the top 6, I thought they'd be 7th place, be the best of the rest in that department. But there's just something isn't clicking there. Has David Moyes' tactics become stale? Has he lost the dressing room? Is there something's not clicking there? That's for certain, right? So it will be interesting to see how it develops. I'm not sure if he can fix it. I doubt he'll be able to turn it around like that. We all know Moyes has had 2 spells at West Ham. Obviously, the first one wasn't great. The second one has turned out to be pretty good, but not it's fading away a little bit. So it will be interesting to see whether or not they can turn it around. What I'm looking at is kind of some difference. I feel like the West Ham have been the same since pretty much they've started being good. They've just kind of maintained the same level. Whereas when you look at clubs, I'm not talking about Liverpool or City. When you look at clubs around them, they always change. Whether it's for the better or for the worse, they always change, because they know that if we change, maybe not year on year, and actually that's probably not the best way to describe it, but if we change, not in a drastic manner, we're not changing everything, all the players, tactics, manager, everything, but there's little hints of changes here and there that just allow for unpredictability to be put back into those teams, and for some fire in the belly to be put back in those teams, because of the, maybe not instability, because I feel like instability can either create a good atmosphere and a competitive atmosphere, or a down toolsing atmosphere, which is definitely not happening to West Ham. What's actually happening to West Ham is that everything is too predictable. Everything from team selection to tactics is too predictable, meaning the players just have a layer of comfortability about them. We all know it's Rice and Souček in the middle. We all know that. We all know it's Cresswell, Soufal on either fullback. We all know it's Antonio up front, Bowen on the wing. We all know this is what's going to happen every single game. And that creates comfortability within the squad, which goes back to what they're motivated by. That's where this whole crux of the team, of their issues, are being stemmed from, in my opinion. It's West Ham, the players aren't motivated enough. The manager isn't motivated enough to get the best out of the team. Now, the reason I say this is because when they were up and coming, when they were good, or maybe not when they were good, but when they were building to the side that they were last year and the year before, they were motivated to prove everyone wrong. They were motivated to get into Europe. They were doing all this stuff, breaking into the top 4, etc. Now they got into Europe last year. They reached far in European competition, the kind of motivation has dipped in that sense, and it's also dipped in the sense of Declan Rice knows he's playing every game. Thomas Souček knows he's playing every game. Antonio knows he's playing every game. Sufal knows he's playing every game. Cresswell knows he's playing every game. So where's the motivation for these players to be better and to improve and to kind of stake their claim? I feel like that's what drove the likes of Jared Bowen and Thomas Souček to be very good footballers last year and the year before. Jared Bowen, no, he came from Hull, I think. Like, did he come from Hull? I don't know. I don't know where he came from, but he didn't come from. He's not this prodigy player. He had to prove people wrong. He had the motivation to prove people wrong, and he did that. Thomas Souček, same thing. Now that the fact that they've got their kind of comfortability about them, they just don't really care. That's what it looks like from the outside, anyway. So I don't know how you change that. Is it a manager change? Is it a direction change? Like in terms of like a whole club direction? Is it a tactics change? Something needs to change there. Whether it's a player change, maybe they need to get rid of some of these guys. I don't know, but they're becoming too predictable, and they're becoming too comfortable in themselves, and that doesn't create a competitive create a competitive atmosphere for these players to prove everyone wrong. So that's probably where the crux of their issues start, and also the lack of investment. I know they brought in Scamacca and they brought in the two centre halves, one of which is injured. So I know that's not great, and I know they probably do need some reinforcements in other areas of the pitch. I know they were after a defender who I can't, like, not a defender, a defensive midfielder who I think went to Everton. His name is escaping me, but if that's right, then you'll know who I'm talking about. But they brought in Maxwell Cornet, which is good. It's a good signing. It's not great. I think it's perfect depth. Scamacca, like I said, should become a very good player. He has all the physical and technical attributes to become a better player, or a very good player, I should say. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what changes, because something has to give. If West Ham come out next week and it's exactly the same, then there's going to be issues. There's going to be major red flags, because if they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, something is gonna happen bad. Like, no shit, but like something bad's gonna happen. They're either gonna get smacked, or they're gonna go on a poor run of results, or someone's gonna get the sack, or whatever. So I think David Moyes needs to be proactive. I like, maybe not proactive, because we all know now that there's something wrong. So he needs to be reactive enough to get this under control, because it's going to slip away from them very quickly. If they keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's going to slip away from them, and they're going to lose touch to where they were last year, and they're going to lose that fabric of what they built, that like underdog kind of never say die attitude. That's going to fade away from them the more and more David Moyes doesn't want to change, and the more and more this poor run of form continues. Something needs to give, and it needs to give ASAP, because West Ham are struggling big time. So I don't know what the change is. That's something for David Moyes to figure out, and that's something for David Moyes to kind of decipher within himself and his coaching staff, because I feel like that's where the biggest impact can be felt in terms of change. Change tactics, change systems. Get Ben Johnson starting. Get Cornet starting. Get Scamacca starting. Just change things up. Maybe go to a back five. I know you can't, because you've got one fit centre back, but just do something. They need to do something. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know where it goes, but tactically something needs to give. And if we don't see it in the next game, it will be very concerning. But moving on, from a team that's underperforming to a team that's maybe not overperforming, but a team that we were all very excited to see. As I yawn again, and as my eyes become very red because I am very tired. I promised this wasn't going to happen last week, last week I promised this wasn't going to happen again, but it is what it is. Let's go to Nottingham Forest. Now, I don't want to. We all know Steve Cooper's doing great. Stevie, he's a good manager. We all know that. And for those of you who took note of the championship last season, and took note of what he was able to do with Forest last season, know that he's a good manager. So I'm not speaking about that. I'm speaking about the fact that they are spending and have spent £44.5 million on Wolves player Morgan Gibbs-White. Now, I just don't understand. Like, I don't know. This sign is confusing me because we all know the whole money aspect of the Premier League is so different to anywhere else in the world of football. Promoted teams are spending £30+ million. That just does not happen in any other league. Just doesn't happen. Fact. Just doesn't happen. The Premier League is becoming more and more sanitised by money. Like I said, when I mentioned Casemiro and Manchester United, £60 million isn't a whole lot for a team like Manchester United, and for the world of football now, it's not a lot at all. So, I'm not. I just want to bear that in mind when I speak about this. But £44 million for Morgan Gibbs-White is a hell of a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money. So, where this goes, I don't know. Does he come right into the system and play straight away? I know he wasn't overly in favour at Wolves. I know he played. I know he's very exciting at Wolves, but there were players ahead of him, I do believe. So it'll be interesting to see where Steve Cooper thinks he fits in his system. Obviously, Steve Cooper would have identified him, and I would have identified him and was like, "Yep, he's the guy I want. He's the player that can really secure this this side a place in the Premier League next season." Because when you spend this much money on a player, you really need the reassurance you need the reassurance in the signing that this player will keep us up. So I think he's got it right. I think the signing itself is right. I think if you had told me that Forest would have signed the Morgan Gibbs-White, I would have been like, yes, this is very good. £44 million though, I just don't know. And Marinakis, who is the president, Evangelos Marinakis, he's a crazy man, isn't he? He's a Thirio, as we would say in Greek. So I'm not really sure he cares, as we've seen. He just kind of wants to win. So yeah, it will be interesting to see where this develops. From a board level, I don't think they'll be too worried. From obviously a fans level, I don't think they'll be too worried. And Steve Cooper would just want the best players. So I trust Steve Cooper's ability to get the best out of Morgan Gibbs-White. I think he's a good player. I think he'll do well for them. I was just staggered when I heard £44.5 million. Really crazy considering this time a decade ago, Fernando Torres was going to Chelsea for £50 million, and that was unheard of. So yeah, that was a big you on that one. As I am really confused by the price tag, I'm not surprised, and I'm waiting to see a day where we see a player move for 60-70 million pounds and we think, oh yeah, he's a good backup for that team or something like that. It'll be interesting to see, but I feel like it'll be interesting. I feel like the way that money is going in football, we're going to see through the promotion teams. That's the point I was going to make. So if you look 10 years ago, how much money the newly promoted sides were spending, whereas you look at it now, and in 10 years it's going to be even more ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be very, very interesting to see, no doubt. As we move on to a team that isn't spending the money required, is Chelsea, my team Chelsea. Now, we were looking at Forest spending a lot of money on Morgan Gibbs-White, and now we're going to look at Chelsea, who aren't spending a lot of money on players in areas which they desperately need. So, I'm going to take a sip of water from a Gatorade no sugar Glacier Freeze bottle. Very nice, very, very nice drink. Let's go to Chelsea. So, like I said from the top of the show, my sporting teams like torturing me in the most cruelest way possible, and Chelsea lost 3-0 to Leeds over the weekend in a pretty embarrassing and disgraceful and appalling and abysmal and shocking and shit fashion. So, do I expect anything less? Not really. Do I expect anything more? I would like to think I would, but yeah, the story of what this game was Chelsea not spending money. Like they got Koulibaly in, great, tick. Cucurella, tick. But the fact that Chelsea aren't buying a defensive midfielder and aren't buying a striker is really inhibiting their ability to actually make a sustained bid for the title. Because we saw last week against Spurs, when they're on, they're on. Like Chelsea, when they're on and they're playing well and Tuchel has this team up and running, it's scintillating to watch. It's absolutely scintillating football. It's just when things aren't going their way, when teams are putting them on the back foot, and when their depth is tested a little bit, that's where we see the worst Chelsea. So we saw over the weekend that Conor Gallagher started in alongside Jorginho in the double pivot. That didn't really work. Conor Gallagher did not have a great game at all. And then we saw a back three which was put under pressure time and time again, and wasn't really able to sustain it. And we saw Koulibaly get sent off, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. And it's just concerning. It's concerning because they're playing Reece James in a back three, and Reece James is being wasted in a back three, by the way. Wasted. Utterly wasted. The fact that Chelsea haven't signed a centre-back to just put Reece James on the right and play the centre back in that position is really concerning, and the fact that they're thinking of letting go of Chalobah is even more concerning because I just don't get it. It almost seems too obvious, Chelsea need a centre back. They're looking at Fofana, which would be a good signing. Like I said, money is. Let's just not even talk about the money because money doesn't exist in football. It's fake. Fofana, good signing, but is he that signing that takes him to the next level? He's a good player. But I don't think he's that player. I don't think he's that guy. And they still need a striker because Havertz, you're limiting his ability to have a influence on the game playing him up front. I think he's best at playing. I mean, he probably doesn't even suit Chelsea's system because I reckon he's best at playing as a second striker in a 4-2-3-1 or a. Maybe you could play him as an outside forward. Play him in that Sterling or Mount role. Maybe that could be a thing. But when you look at who you're going to drop, you can't drop Raheem Sterling. You spent £50 million on him, and you can't drop Mason Mount because he provides so much for that team that when you take him out, you lose that connection from midfield to attack, and you lose that defensive press. So I don't really know where Havertz fits. Should Chelsea buy a striker? And I mean, on top of all, they need to sign a defensive midfielder. Like maybe not a defensive midfielder, but a defensive-minded central midfielder is a must for them because Gallagher, Conte, Kovacic, Jorginho. We already know Kovacic and Kante are made of spaghetti. Can you play Mount in a double pivot? Probably not. I mean, you could maybe get away with it, depending on the opposition. Can you play Ruben Loftus-Cheek in a double pivot? Maybe. You could probably play him there more than you can play Mount. But, I mean, firstly, Loftus-Cheek has played fantastically well on the right-hand side. But if Chelsea sign a centre-back, he'll be shunted out of that position to make way for Reece James. So, Chelsea in a tricky scenario. They got humiliated by Leeds. And it's going to be an interesting last couple of week in a bit in the transfer window because they need to act. They need to act quick, smart because they're struggling, and they need to get that depth sorted. They need to keep Chalobah. I don't understand why they're even going to think about getting rid of him. I'm not even sure if it's been confirmed yet or not, but they can't get rid of Chalobah. And yeah, it's quite I'm almost don't really know what to say because I'm waiting for things to happen. I'm waiting for Chelsea to either capitulate or to sign the best centre mid in the world or the best striker or the best defender in the world. So, I mean, we all know Chelsea's track record with signings isn't great. Ziyech, Pulisic, not great. Werner, not great. Havertz, pretty good. Not overly great though. Like Havertz is a Chelsea icon and a Chelsea hero and has paid every single cent of that transfer fee back. But if we're looking at it in an overall perspective, not really that great. So I am just kind of waiting for Chelsea to make their move, and then I'll comment on their move, whether it's not signing a centre back and keeping Chalobah, moving to a back four, signing Cristiano Ronaldo or Lewandowski or Ivan Toney or someone. And then we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, if Chelsea, let's just assume Chelsea get Fofana, Frankie de Jong, because they're the two players that have been linked, and they're the two players that they'll probably get because of how ridiculous the transfer market is these days. And they could probably get away without getting a striker. But yeah, let's just say they get Tony as well, or even Lewandowski or Aubameyang, which has been heavily linked. The talent is there for them to be almost unbeatable in terms of pure talent. Yeah, I just don't think this squad is clicking just yet. I feel like they're playing a very safe game. They're playing a very safe brand of football. Playing a very safe style of football, in my opinion. So whether or not that gets fixed or that changes based on Tuchel's preference, I don't know. Do I think it will? I doubt it. Is it going to be good should they get the right signings in? I do think it can be, and Chelsea can certainly make a charge. Maybe for the title. I wouldn't say charge for the title, but Chelsea can be competitive in the title race just by the looks of how competitive it will be this year. We've seen Liverpool drop points twice. City drop points against Newcastle. United aren't there. Spurs are dropping points. Arsenal seem to be the best team in the league, and we all know how that will inevitably finish. So, it'll be. Chelsea need to act now because you'd rather make a mistake early than make a mistake late. So they need to act as soon as possible to be able to rectify the situation that they're in, because it's going to get worse before it gets any better, in my opinion. But moving away from England, let's go away from England. Let's hop on a flight. Actually, probably wouldn't be a flight; it'd be a train to Paris and talk about PSG ever so briefly, because they've had an unbelievable start to the season. They've scored 17 goals in 3 games. They're undefeated, of course. 9 points from 9. Mbappe, Messi, Neymar are firing on all cylinders. They're playing this 3-4-3 formation, 3-4-1-2 formation. Hakimi being a very good player. Vitinha providing that defensive support. Verratti playing alongside him in that double pivot. Looks very good. Now, this has kind of confused me in a sense because their manager, Christopher Gailita, I hadn't heard of before. Apparently, he's well rated in French football, and in France, he's highly sought after by a lot of people, and is very well rated. But I'm just concerned about and confused about their about where they sit. So that's why I wanted to speak about it and kind of get my thoughts out as I have another sip of water ever so briefly. Cheers. So PSG. We all know what happened with Mbappe last week and the weeks before. Obviously, the penalty scenario, he's being a petulant prick, to put it bluntly. There's a video of him on Twitter, taken from one of the games where he just stops running on a counter-attack. Like, a counter-attack is on, he doesn't get the pass and just stops. And obviously, with the penalty stuff, he missed the penalty, then wanted to get it off Neymar and stuff. It's so weird because Mbappe is quite clearly the headmaster. Like, he's quite clearly the person that everyone needs to listen to, and that evidently that won't end well because he's a 21-year-old with the ego of Jesus Christ. So I don't think it'll end well, but they're playing scintillating football. They beat Nice, I think it was 7-1, scored within the first 10 seconds. It looks like the manager has got these three players, Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, firing all firing on all cylinders at the one time. And if he can continue this and if he can maintain this, PSG are going to be a scary proposition. Scary proposition. I don't think it will last, or it might last, but like, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see because why couldn't Poch do this? I feel like that's probably the question that I've come out of this the most. Obviously, looking at it from an English football perspective, a lot more obviously Poch's connection. What couldn't Poch do? Is he a poor man manager? But that doesn't really make sense because he made Tottenham players run through big walls for him, and obviously at Southampton he was a fantastic man manager. Is he tactically inept? But I mean, he turned Harry Kane, Dele Alli, like these guys into world class players. Like he took Lucas Moura to a Champions League final, took Musa Sissoko to a Champions League final. So he quite clearly isn't tactically inept. Was it just the styles of Mbappe, Neymar, Messi just didn't suit Poch? The pressing style didn't suit them. Is that what it was? Is that all it was? I don't know. But I feel like questions are going to be asked about Poch, why he couldn't get the best out of them. And I feel like you have to go to the manager first because it's a manager's job to get the best out of his players. And if he can't, then you have to question him more than anyone else. But that came to mind as I saw PSG dominate over the weekend, and I looked at back at some of their games and thought, well, they're playing scintillating football. This is unbelievable to watch. They scored 5 goals in their first 2 games and scored 7 over the weekend. So I thought I had to speak about that. So yeah, PSG are quite a confusing team, and you certainly wouldn't want to play them in the Champions League, put it that way, because they'll dismantle teams at will. If they get the chance. So yeah, I mean, I just don't. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see whether or not they can sustain this. That's probably going to be the best way of me putting it. Whether or not they can sustain this, but let's move on to who went into foot and let's finish up. So for those who haven't seen a previous episode of this, basically this segment is where we look through the week of football and who did something dumb, daft, funny, not great, or quite amusing, or whatever. Now, there's 2 people I want to speak on. I want to speak about the first one, Kalidou Koulibaly. That is the most dumbest red card I've ever seen, ever given in my life. It was in the Leeds game. You've probably all seen it, but it was just utterly just stupid, like the most stupid piece of football I've ever seen. So yeah, mate, you're an idiot. Secondly, Declan Rice. Now, there's a video going around on Twitter of Declan Rice singing Ice Ice Baby with Jamie Redknapp and Mika Richards on some sort of TV show. It is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. And why is he doing it? I love it. I love it because I like Rice as a personality. I like him as a player. And I like that he's kind of out there and funny and willing to make himself the butt of all jokes, which is great. But your team just fell to Nottingham Forest. Your team has then lost in a game in which you missed the penalty. You missed the penalty in against Forest. You then lost to Brighton. I'm not sure when this was recorded, whether or not this is like a very old clip that's just resurfaced, or whether this was recorded weeks or months ago. I don't know. But let's just assume that this has been recorded and released. This week. Why are you doing it? I don't get it. I like it. I really do. But why? I just don't get it. A bit more professionalism, but we don't want robots in the game, so it was quite funny to see. It put a smile on my face, no doubt. But yeah, so let's move on to the preview of the week. Really, only one game to make a major note of, and that is Liverpool versus Manchester United. Yeah, Liverpool versus United. This could either end 1-0 United or 5-0 Liverpool, in my opinion. It's going to be interesting, and I just think Liverpool will be too good for them, although I don't want to put any jinxes on either side. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. It's at 5 a.m, so I probably won't be able to watch it because of university and that, and sleep schedule, of course. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see how Liverpool line up, considering Jota injured, Nunes suspended, of course. Oh, that's who went into footed. Darwin Nunes. I forgot because that was at the back. That was last week. I didn't even touch on it. Darwin Nunes with the most dumbest red card. Forget Koulibaly. Darwin Nunes, mate. Get your head fixed. Like, if you can't handle a little bit of push and shove, get out of the league. Because that was seriously embarrassing. Embarrassing. And you put the nut on someone just for no reason. Yeah, that was quite funny. And, I mean, he's a great player. Quality player. But he needs to just have a little bit more mental strength than that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Liverpool line up. Because, obviously, Jota, Nunes, Firmino's under an injury cloud, I believe. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that happens. Maybe Harvey Elliott. Is Harvey Elliott in the squad? Or is he even injured? I don't think he is. Maybe he'll get run around. Who knows? But yeah, that is all. Tick over 45 minutes. Thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around. If you have stuck around rather this far and you've enjoyed, make sure you subscribe to the 2 Footer Tackle Podcast YouTube channel. Like the video. Put notification bells on as well so you don't miss any clips or any other uploads. What else am I saying? The socials, 2 Footer Tackle Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, TFTPod on Twitter, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow, shares it out to more people. It would mean more than the world if you could give it some love. I enjoy doing this every week. Although this week is probably the first week where I didn't really want to front up. Didn't really want to do it based on what I spoke about at the very start of this podcast. But I'm here now, I've done it, and I love doing this. So yeah, if you could just share it or just give it some love, it would mean more than the world to me. But yes, I'll see you guys next week. Make sure you stay safe, stay well. See you guys next week oh no, the music isn't playing. Here we go, now it is. Thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys next time. Goodbye.